There's a particular kind of tired that a lot of people over 60 know all too well, and it's not the good kind of tired you feel after a long day of activity, the kind that makes falling asleep easy and waking up refreshed feel natural. I'm talking about a different kind of tired, the kind where you open your eyes in the morning after what felt like a full night in bed, and instead of feeling rested, you feel like you barely slept at all. Your body feels heavy, your mind feels foggy. You reach for coffee not because you enjoy the ritual, but because you genuinely need it just to feel functional enough to start your day. And maybe the most frustrating part is that this has become so normal, so expected, that you've stopped even questioning it. You've just accepted that this is what mornings look like now. I want to gently push back on that idea today, because waking up exhausted every single morning is not simply an inevitable part of getting older. It is almost always a sign that something specific is happening, something that has a real cause, and in the vast majority of cases, something that can genuinely be addressed and improved. Today, we're going to walk through exactly why this happens after 60 and what you can actually do about it, step by step. I think it's worth saying clearly, right at the start, that this feeling of chronic morning exhaustion is far more common than most people realize, and far more common than most people are willing to admit out loud. It's easy to feel a bit embarrassed talking about it, as though everyone else your age is bounding out of bed full of energy while you alone are struggling. That simply isn't true. Sleep difficulties and persistent fatigue among older adults are extraordinarily common, which is actually good news in a way, because it means there's been a great deal of research into why this happens and what genuinely helps. You are not broken, and you are not alone. And there is real, practical information available that can make a genuine difference in how you feel each morning. Let's start with understanding what's genuinely different about sleep after 60 compared to sleep in your 30s or 40s, because this context matters enormously for understanding your own experience. Sleep architecture, meaning the structure and pattern of the different stages your brain cycles through during the night, does naturally change with age. Older adults tend to spend less time in the deepest, most restorative stages of sleep, sometimes called slow-wave sleep, and more time in lighter stages of sleep that are more easily disrupted by noise, discomfort, or the need to use the bathroom. This means that even in a perfectly healthy older adult with no underlying sleep disorder, the quality and depth of sleep genuinely shifts somewhat compared to younger years. Additionally, many older adults experience what's called a phase advance in their internal body clock, meaning they naturally start to feel sleepy earlier in the evening and wake up earlier in the morning compared to before. This isn't necessarily a problem in itself, but it can create friction when someone tries to keep the same bedtime and schedule they had decades earlier, leading to lying awake in bed not actually sleeping, which reduces overall sleep efficiency. Now, understanding these natural changes is helpful context, but I don't want you to hear this and think that waking up exhausted every single day is simply something you have to accept as an unavoidable consequence of aging. There's a meaningful difference between sleep changing somewhat in character, which is normal, and sleep becoming so poor in quality that you're left feeling depleted day after day, which is not something you should simply live with. Let's go through the most common specific causes behind this kind of persistent morning exhaustion, one at a time, because pinpointing which of these applies to your particular situation is the real key to actually fixing it. The first, and honestly one of the most common and most underdiagnosed causes, particularly in older adults, is sleep apnea. This is a condition where breathing repeatedly stops and starts throughout the night, sometimes dozens or even over 100 times in a single night, without the person fully waking up or remembering it happening. Each pause in breathing triggers a brief surge of stress hormones and a jolt back toward lighter sleep, even if you never consciously wake up, which means the deep, restorative stages of sleep get interrupted over and over throughout the night. The result is that someone can spend a full 8 hours in bed and still wake up feeling as though they barely slept, because the actual quality and continuity of that sleep was severely fragmented the entire time. Sleep apnea becomes considerably more common as people age, and it's worth knowing that it doesn't always look the way people expect. The classic image most people have is of a loud, heavy snorer, often assumed to be an overweight man, gasping for air throughout the night. And while loud snoring with pauses followed by gasping or choking sounds is indeed a very common sign, sleep apnea in older adults, and particularly in women, can present quite differently, sometimes with much quieter or less dramatic snoring, or with symptoms that look more like general fatigue, morning headaches, difficulty concentrating, or even mood changes, without an obvious dramatic breathing pattern that a bed partner would necessarily notice or mention. This is part of why sleep apnea is so frequently missed in older adults, especially those who live alone and don't have anyone in the room at night to observe unusual breathing patterns. If you wake up with a dry mouth or a headache most mornings, if you've been told by a partner that you snore loudly or seem to stop breathing at times, if you find yourself falling asleep unintentionally during quiet daytime activities like reading or watching television, or if you simply cannot shake this feeling of unrefreshing sleep despite spending adequate time in bed, it's genuinely worth bringing this up with your doctor and asking about a sleep study. Sleep studies have become considerably more accessible in recent years, with many now available as simple at-home tests using a small monitoring device you wear for one night, rather than requiring an overnight stay in a sleep lab, which makes this evaluation far less intimidating and inconvenient than it once was. And the treatment for sleep apnea, most commonly a CPAP machine that gently keeps your airway open throughout the night, genuinely transforms how people feel, often within just the first few nights of consistent use. I've heard so many people describe finally getting properly treated for sleep apnea as feeling like they got years of their energy and mental clarity back almost overnight. I want to gently address a common hesitation here too, because I know that the idea of wearing a CPAP mask overnight can sound uncomfortable or even a little intimidating if you've never tried it. Many people initially resist getting evaluated for this exact reason, imagining something bulky and disruptive. The reality today is considerably more comfortable than what existed even a decade ago. Modern CPAP equipment has become smaller, quieter, and available in a wide range of mask styles, including minimal nasal pillow designs that some people find barely noticeable once they adjust. Most people do need a short adjustment period, typically a couple of weeks, to get used to sleeping with the equipment, but the vast majority of people who stick with it describe the improvement in their daytime energy and mental clarity as genuinely life-changing, well worth the initial adjustment. The second major cause worth exploring is what's happening with your sleep environment and your habits leading up to bedtime, sometimes referred to collectively as sleep hygiene. I know this term can sound a bit clinical, but it really just means the conditions and routines that either support or undermine good sleep. Let's go through some of the most impactful factors here, because small adjustments in this area often produce noticeably better sleep within just a week or two. Your mattress and pillow deserve a mention right away, since these are things people often keep for many years, past the point where they're still providing adequate support. As bodies change with age, sometimes developing new areas of joint sensitivity or a shift in preferred sleep position, a mattress that felt perfectly comfortable a decade ago may no longer be providing the support your body currently needs, which can contribute to discomfort that disrupts sleep without you necessarily connecting the dots. If your mattress is more than 7 to 10 years old, or if you find yourself waking up with new aches and stiffness that ease once you're up and moving around, it may be worth having it evaluated, or at minimum trying a supportive mattress topper as a more affordable first step, along with making sure your pillow properly supports your neck in whatever position you typically sleep in. Room temperature matters more than most people realize. Your body naturally needs to drop its core temperature slightly in order to fall into and stay in deep sleep, and a bedroom that's too warm can genuinely interfere with this process, leading to restless, lighter sleep, even if you don't consciously notice feeling hot. Most sleep researchers suggest a bedroom temperature somewhere in the range of 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit tends to be ideal for most people, though this can vary somewhat based on individual preference. If you tend to run warm at night, Lighter bedding, moisture-wicking sleepwear, or even a small fan can make a meaningful difference. Light exposure, both during the day and at night, plays a bigger role in sleep quality than many people appreciate. Your body's internal clock, which regulates when you feel sleepy and when you feel alert, is heavily influenced by light exposure. Getting bright, ideally natural light exposure earlier in the day, even just sitting near a window with morning coffee or taking a short walk outside shortly after waking, helps reinforce a strong, healthy circadian rhythm, which in turn supports feeling appropriately sleepy at the right time each evening. Conversely, exposure to bright light, particularly the blue light emitted by phones, tablets, computers, and televisions in the hour or two before bed, can suppress the production of melatonin, the hormone that signals to your body that it's time to wind down and prepare for sleep. If you're someone who scrolls on a phone or watches television right up until the moment you try to fall asleep, this alone could be meaningfully contributing to poorer sleep quality, even if you don't feel like it's affecting you in the moment. Noise disruption is another factor that becomes increasingly relevant with age, partly because, as I mentioned earlier, older adults naturally spend more time in lighter, more easily disrupted stages of sleep. A noise that might not have bothered you at all in your 30s, a partner's movement, a passing car, a creaky pipe, might be enough to pull you out of a lighter sleep stage now, even if you don't fully wake up and don't remember it happening the next morning. If you live somewhere with unpredictable noise, whether from traffic, neighbors, or household sounds, a simple white noise machine, a fan, or even earplugs designed for comfortable overnight use can provide a consistent, soothing background sound that masks these disruptive noises and helps maintain more continuous sleep throughout the night. Caffeine and alcohol both deserve honest attention here, because their effects tend to become more pronounced with age. As we get older, our bodies generally metabolize caffeine somewhat more slowly, meaning that afternoon cup of coffee that never used to bother your sleep in earlier decades might now still have a meaningful amount of caffeine circulating in your system by bedtime. If you're someone who drinks coffee, tea, or caffeinated soda in the afternoon and struggles with sleep, experimenting with cutting off caffeine by early afternoon, say by 1 or 2 in the afternoon, for a couple of weeks, can be a genuinely revealing experiment. Alcohol is a bit more complicated, because while it can make you feel drowsy and help you fall asleep initially, it significantly disrupts the deeper, more restorative stages of sleep later in the night, and it's a common contributor to waking up in the middle of the night, unable to fall back asleep easily. Many people are surprised to learn that a glass of wine before bed, while it might feel relaxing in the moment, is often quietly working against the very restful sleep they're hoping for. The third major cause behind waking up exhausted, and this one is genuinely important to take seriously, involves underlying medical conditions that can silently disrupt sleep quality or directly cause fatigue, independent of how much time you actually spend asleep. Thyroid problems are a particularly common and often overlooked culprit. An underactive thyroid, called hypothyroidism, becomes considerably more common with age, particularly in women, and one of its hallmark symptoms is persistent fatigue and a feeling of heaviness or sluggishness, even with adequate sleep. This is typically identified through a simple blood test, and if it's the underlying cause, treatment with thyroid hormone replacement medication often produces a genuinely dramatic improvement in energy levels within a matter of weeks. Anemia, meaning a lower than normal level of red blood cells or hemoglobin, is another condition that can cause persistent fatigue and a feeling of exhaustion regardless of sleep quality. Since red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen throughout your body, and insufficient oxygen delivery leaves every system, including your brain and muscles, working with less than they need. Anemia can have various underlying causes, including nutritional deficiencies, chronic conditions, or in some cases, slow internal blood loss that needs to be identified and addressed, which is part of why it's genuinely worth having this checked through blood work rather than assuming fatigue is simply related to sleep or age alone. Vitamin D deficiency and vitamin B12 deficiency are both quite common in older adults and are both associated with fatigue and low energy. Vitamin D is produced by your skin in response to sunlight exposure, and many older adults, particularly those who spend more time indoors or who live in regions with limited sunlight for parts of the year, have insufficient levels. Vitamin B12 absorption naturally becomes somewhat less efficient with age, and certain commonly used medications, along with dietary patterns that include less meat and dairy, can further reduce B12 levels. Both of these are identified through simple blood tests and are relatively straightforward to correct through supplementation once identified. Sleep quality can also be significantly affected by chronic pain conditions, including arthritis, back pain, or other sources of ongoing physical discomfort, which can cause frequent waking or difficulty settling into deep sleep even without a person fully realizing it's happening. If you live with chronic pain, discussing pain management strategies specifically with your sleep in mind, whether that involves the timing of pain medication, physical therapy, or adjustments to your mattress or sleep positioning, with your doctor is a genuinely worthwhile conversation. Depression and anxiety, too, have a profound and bidirectional relationship with sleep. Depression very commonly involves changes in sleep patterns, sometimes causing excessive sleepiness and difficulty getting out of bed, and other times causing early morning waking, where a person wakes up several hours before they intend to and cannot fall back asleep, often accompanied by a low mood upon waking. Anxiety frequently shows up as difficulty falling asleep in the first place, with racing thoughts or worry keeping the mind engaged well past the point where the body feels physically tired. If you've noticed persistent low mood, loss of interest in activities you used to enjoy, or persistent worry that seems to interfere with your ability to relax, particularly around bedtime, this is worth discussing openly with your doctor, since these conditions are genuinely treatable, and treatment very often improves sleep quality significantly as a result. A frequent need to urinate during the night, a condition sometimes called nocturia, is another extremely common contributor to fragmented, poor quality sleep in older adults. This can be related to changes in bladder capacity and function with age, certain medications, prostate issues in men, or other underlying conditions, and even a couple of bathroom trips during the night can be enough to prevent the kind of continuous, uninterrupted deep sleep that leaves you feeling truly rested in the morning. Simple strategies like reducing fluid intake in the couple of hours before bed while still maintaining adequate hydration earlier in the day, and discussing this pattern with your doctor if it's happening frequently, since there may be underlying causes worth addressing or medication timing adjustments that could help, are both worth exploring. The fourth cause I want to address is medications, because this is an area that's genuinely underappreciated in how much it can affect both sleep quality and daytime energy levels. Many medications commonly prescribed to older adults can interfere with sleep architecture, either making it harder to fall asleep, disrupting the deeper stages of sleep, or in some cases, causing daytime drowsiness that then throws off the natural sleep and wake rhythm. Certain blood pressure medications, some antidepressants, corticosteroids, and medications containing stimulants can affect sleep in various ways, and even some over-the-counter medications and supplements can play a role. This absolutely does not mean you should stop or adjust any medication on your own, since these medications are typically prescribed for genuinely important reasons, but it does mean that a periodic, thorough review of everything you're taking, prescription medications, over-the-counter products, and supplements alike with your doctor or pharmacist, specifically asking about potential effects on sleep and energy, can sometimes reveal an adjustment, whether that's a change in timing, dosage, or an alternative medication that meaningfully improves how you feel, particularly in the morning. It's also worth mentioning restless leg syndrome here, a condition that becomes more common with age and that many people have never heard named, even though they experience it regularly. This involves an uncomfortable, sometimes hard to describe sensation in the legs, often described as a crawling, tingling, or restless urge to move that tends to appear specifically in the evening or at night when lying still, and that's temporarily relieved by movement. Because it strikes right as a person is trying to fall asleep or wakes someone in the middle of the night, it can significantly delay sleep onset or fragment sleep throughout the night, all while the person may not even connect their morning exhaustion to this specific nighttime experience. If this description sounds familiar to you, it's genuinely worth mentioning to your doctor by name, since there are effective treatments available, including addressing underlying iron deficiency, which is a common contributing factor, along with specific medications when needed. Now, let's move into the practical solutions, because I want you to leave this conversation not just understanding why this happens, but with a genuinely clear sense of what to actually do about it. The first and most important step is simply this. If your exhaustion has been persistent, meaning most mornings for weeks or longer, please schedule an appointment with your doctor specifically to discuss this, rather than assuming it's just a normal part of getting older that you have to live with. Ask directly about being screened for sleep apnea and ask for blood work to check your thyroid function, complete blood count for anemia, vitamin D and vitamin B12 levels. This single appointment can often identify a clear, treatable cause behind what's been feeling like an unsolvable mystery. While you're working through that process, there's a great deal you can do on your own to improve your sleep environment and habits, and I want to walk through a simple, realistic evening and morning routine that supports better sleep. In the evening, try to establish a consistent wind-down period, ideally starting 30 to 60 minutes before you actually intend to go to sleep. This might include dimming the lights in your home, since bright overhead lighting in the evening can work against your body's natural preparation for sleep, putting away phones, tablets, and other screens, or at minimum using a blue light filter if you do need to use them, and engaging in a calming activity, whether that's reading an actual physical book, gentle stretching, a warm bath or shower, which can actually help trigger the drop in body temperature that supports sleep onset, or some quiet time with a calming hobby. Try to go to bed and wake up at roughly the same time every day, including weekends, since this consistency helps strengthen your body's natural sleep and wake rhythm far more than people typically expect. If you're someone who tends to sleep in dramatically on weekends to try to catch up on lost sleep during the week, this can actually work against you by shifting your internal clock, making it harder to fall asleep at your usual time and contributing to that groggy, unrested feeling. Keep your bedroom reserved primarily for sleep rather than for watching television, working, or other activities if this is practical for your living situation, since this helps your brain form a strong association between your bed and sleep specifically, rather than a mix of alertness and rest. In the morning, try to get bright light exposure as early as possible, ideally natural sunlight, even just a few minutes outside or sitting near a bright window, since this is one of the most powerful signals you can give your body to reinforce a healthy circadian rhythm. Some gentle movement in the morning, even a short walk, can also help shake off grogginess and signal to your body that the day has genuinely begun. I also want to mention the importance of managing what's sometimes called sleep debt versus actually addressing the root cause. If you've been chronically undersleeping or experiencing poor quality sleep for a long period of time, it's genuinely common to need a period of catching up, and this is normal and not something to feel discouraged about. But if you find yourself needing excessive amounts of caffeine just to get through each day, relying on multiple naps that still don't leave you feeling refreshed, or if the exhaustion persists despite consistently getting 7 to 8 hours of time in bed with good sleep habits in place, this is a strong signal that there's likely an underlying cause, whether that's sleep apnea, a medical condition, or something else that genuinely needs medical evaluation rather than simply more willpower or better bedtime habits. I want to address naps specifically for a moment because they can be a helpful tool or an unhelpful crutch, depending on how they're used. A short nap, somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 minutes, taken in the early to mid-afternoon, can genuinely help restore alertness and energy without significantly interfering with nighttime sleep for most people. However, longer naps, or naps taken later in the afternoon or evening, can reduce your body's natural sleep pressure, meaning the accumulated drive to sleep that builds throughout the day, which can then make it harder to fall asleep at your usual bedtime, creating a cycle where poor nighttime sleep leads to needing a nap, which then further disrupts nighttime sleep. If you find yourself needing long naps regularly just to function, this is worth mentioning specifically to your doctor as part of investigating the underlying cause of your fatigue. Exercise deserves a mention here too, because regular physical activity is genuinely one of the most well-supported tools for improving sleep quality, somewhat ironically given that exercise itself requires energy that might feel in short supply when you're already exhausted. Even modest activity, like a daily walk, has been shown in research to improve both how quickly people fall asleep and the overall quality and depth of their sleep. The timing does matter somewhat, since vigorous exercise too close to bedtime can be stimulating for some people and make it harder to wind down. So aiming for your main activity earlier in the day, ideally morning or early afternoon, tends to work best for most people. Though gentle evening activities like a relaxed walk or gentle stretching are generally fine and can even be part of a calming wind-down routine. I want to close by addressing something important about mindset here, because I think the way we think about our own fatigue actually matters. If you've spent months or years assuming that waking up tired is simply what happens now, simply an unavoidable feature of being over 60, I want to gently challenge that belief, because in the vast majority of cases, it simply isn't true. Persistent morning exhaustion is a symptom, and symptoms have causes, and causes, once identified, very often have real, effective solutions. This might mean a sleep study that identifies previously undiagnosed sleep apnea. It might mean blood work that reveals a thyroid issue or a vitamin deficiency that's easily corrected. It might mean a conversation with your doctor about adjusting a medication. It might simply mean building a more consistent, supportive evening routine and reducing afternoon caffeine. Very often, it's actually a combination of a few of these factors working together rather than one single dramatic cause. Please don't accept feeling exhausted every single morning as simply the price of getting older. Your body at 60, 70, 80, and beyond still deserves and is still capable of genuinely restful, restorative sleep and genuinely energized mornings. This isn't about chasing the same sleep you had at 25. It's about making sure that whatever changes are naturally happening with age aren't being made unnecessarily worse by treatable conditions, disrupted habits, or issues that simply haven't been identified yet because no one asked the right questions. Start with that conversation with your doctor. Start experimenting with a few of the sleep hygiene changes we've talked about today. Give these changes a genuine few weeks to take effect, since sleep improvements often build gradually rather than happening overnight. And trust that this particular kind of tiredness, the kind that follows you through every single morning no matter how much time you spent in bed, is not something you simply have to live with for the rest of your life. It's something you have real, genuine power to understand and to change, starting today. I'd encourage you to think of this less like a single problem to solve and more like a bit of detective work, where you're gathering clues about your own particular body and your own particular patterns. Keep a simple sleep journal for a couple of weeks if it helps, jotting down what time you went to bed, roughly how many times you woke up, how you felt in the morning on a simple scale, and anything notable like caffeine intake, alcohol, stress, or unusual noise. Patterns often become clear surprisingly quickly once you're tracking even loosely, and having this information in hand also makes your conversation with your doctor considerably more productive, since you'll be able to describe specific patterns rather than a vague, general sense of tiredness. Waking up refreshed and genuinely ready for your day isn't a luxury reserved for younger people, and it isn't something you have to quietly give up simply because the years have added up. With the right information and a little patience while you work through the possibilities, it's a genuinely realistic goal and one well worth pursuing.